Why South Sudan? An Every Village podcast where we answer questions about the world's youngest nation. The question of the day is, how can anything be sustainable in a war-torn nation? Hey everyone, my name is Tiana Johnston. I'm the host of this podcast called Why South Sudan, where we answer questions about the world's newest nation. And today the question is a doozy. It's a good one. And so who better to answer this question than the Andrew Brown?
I could think of a lot of people probably that are better, but thank you for always talking me up.
Totally. Okay, so first I want to give a shout out. This is episode 41.
Ooh.
Isn't that crazy?
Normally we celebrate like round numbers, but 41's great.
It's true. But man, just to see the vision and then it come to life, and now 41 episodes later.
It's true.
Which is awesome.
And
I enjoy.
It's full term.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
The birth.
Is it 42 weeks?
I thought it was 40.
40?
I think it's 40.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, man. Yeah, super exciting. So today, the question is a doozy, and I know we can go in a lot of different directions, and I just can't wait to pick your, I was going to say little brain, your big brain. Okay, so would love to know your thoughts on this one.
Yeah. This really is one that you could go a lot of directions. And so this might be a little scattershot, but let's just go for it. So how can anything be sustainable in a war-torn nation? Let me start with some hard realities, and then we'll look at some hopeful realities. Hard realities. A number of years ago, I read a book called The 3 Levels of Sustainability, which is applicable for today's question. And it was a very academic book, but one of the things it talked about was 3 levels of sustainability, one of them being societal sustainability. And they said, without societal sustainability, nothing can be sustainable. And when I read that, I, of course, was thinking about South Sudan, and I thought that is, to a large degree, that is true. And that is that, if your nation is at risk of, going straight back into a civil war overnight, then there's not a whole lot you can do outside of that to ensure sustainability. You could start a business, you could do a ministry, you could build this or that or whatever, economic empowerment, all these things, and that could all go up in flames if a country goes straight into war, right? And geopolitical stability is critical for long-term sustainability in a nation. And so that is a hard reality to the work we're doing. And we're working in a place, South Sudan, that is a bit fragile. And I've seen that over my years of working in South Sudan. As we've, when I started there, it was in a time of peace. And then we went into civil war, and it lasted for several years. And so that does take the nation back. It does really reduce the sustainability of the work that you're doing. And so, and I just think, as Americans understand the huge impact that COVID had on the nation's fabric economically and other things, right? That was a major crisis that, had a deep, lasting impact. So many small businesses went out of business. So many things that were, that weren't so big that they could survive that kind of thing were shut down, right? That's the kind of impact that a large scale, issue like a war can create. And so, so I would say that in that respect, everything we do in South Sudan is the stability of it or the sustainability of it is dependent to some degree on factors outside of our control. That's a risk. But I want to remind us, and I have to remind myself of this, is that, we are here working in South Sudan because of the gospel and because of the Great Commission. Christ has sent his disciples out to every nation to make disciples, and that's our highest call. And you don't see the word sustainable anywhere in Scripture, and it is not our ultimate mission. So while every village thinks about sustainability, we work towards sustainability, we believe it's very important and it's the best way to approach things, it is not our ultimate mission and call. If it were, we would not be working in a place like South Sudan. We'd be doing other work, right? And so we have to remind ourselves of that and not hide away, not try to pretend that everything is all hunky dory and great when things are challenging. There are struggles in working in the world's youngest nation that has experienced decades and decades and decades of war and no education and medical issues and all the challenges that we've talked about here. Those lead to struggles and challenges against long-term sustainability. But we're called to this place because Christ has told us to go and to every nation. And this is the place that he's put on our hearts. He's opened those doors, and we're having incredibly fruitful ministry. And should that ever have to go backwards a step because of unique challenges, we're still committed to that place. So that's kind of the hard reality to start with. But there's a lot of hopeful reality behind the word sustainability as well. And what does it look like? And so I would answer the question that in some ways, the answer to the question is, can true sustainability be reached in a war-torn nation? Well, never fully. But I also have to, to ask, what is sustainability? Because we as Americans like to kind of push, that's kind of a buzzword nowadays, certainly in the nonprofit world, but honestly in a lot of different things. People talk about locally sustainable, farming and all this stuff, right? Well, what does that mean? And if you think about, I want to relate two different examples in the United States that are so common. Small startup businesses are not sustainable, and that's okay. We believe in that. That's the American process, right? There's a dream. It starts with a dream, a vision, and it might be a profitable one. It might not be. Ultimately, what determines a business and its sustainability is, can it make a profit? But oftentimes that takes years, and it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the vision. But it requires investors who continue to believe in that vision, and they continue to give that money. And if you pull those investors out, that business would flop. And so sustainability, again, is working towards that as a good thing, even in businesses in the United States. But we have to recognize we support unsustainable things all the time. Look at nonprofits as a different thing. So businesses is one thing. Nonprofits are, by essence, they are not sustainable. Every village is fully dependent on funding of supporters that believe in the vision of every village. So it's all about the vision and the accomplishment of that. And if our supporters decided to stop supporting us, guess what? Our ministry wouldn't be sustainable. So what is sustainability? Well, we're all a lot more dependent on others than we realize. We're so in our national identity, we're so proud of our self-independence and self-determination, and yet the truth is that there's a healthy level of dependency that we tend to not acknowledge in the United States, and yet we do live it out. And so the fact that the South Sudanese are dependent on outside funding is not a problem that needs to be solved. Now, it is something that, long term, there are guidelines that or milestones that we want to reach to see progress and development and flourishing and prosperity. But outside funding in and of itself is not the evil that we sometimes think of as, that's not a good thing. They're dependent on us, and so the South Sudanese are going to be dependent on one person or another, regardless whether it's a Christian ministry or something else. And so that's a reality. So let's get to the hopeful side of it, though. And Tiana, even as we were just chatting right before we started the podcast, you said something about war-torn nations that was so important, and I think it's important to remember. So I don't know if you can share that of what is sustainability? Is it possible in a war-torn nation? What did you say to me?
Yeah, the comment that I made was just that a war-torn nation, they don't want to stay a war-torn nation. They want to have hope for their nation to change. And so for them to even have the desire for it, and I think it's so easy to kind of just think, oh, it's never going to change. But a war-torn nation, we've known, nation after nation, things have, civil wars have broken out and everything. But even America, right. We were also that too. But look at us now.
Yeah, that's right. And that's such like so many truths, it just takes perspective. when you're in the middle of it, it can
Mhm.
feel overwhelming and can feel like you can't get past it. But if you step back and look at history and you look at, time and you look at we see this all the time is war-torn nations that do develop and eventually reach the point of stability where you can say, man, there are sustainable things all over the place. And that's a beautiful thing. And again, I'll say it starts with a vision. And that's what our vision is, to build South Sudan as a nation for Christ. That's the vision and what we believe in, and we believe it's possible. And yes, it's going to take more than one generation to fully be reached, but we are having a huge impact in this generation that is going to carry forward to the next and the next and the next. And, most likely it's going to be after I'm in the grave, but there will be South Sudanese who grew up not knowing what instability looks like, not knowing what it was like for their ancestors to struggle, hand to mouth in feeding their families, and struggle with a revolution and with formation of government and with community organizations and all these different things. They won't remember that because it's so distant. In the United States, I remember when I first moved to Africa, talking to Africans. Every African knows what it's like to farm, and every African knows what it's like to I was trying to think of a diplomatic way to say it, to kill your own meat, whether it's a chicken or slaughter a goat or whatever, right? Because they all grew up on the farm, or they have family out in the farm, and they go, even if they are from the city, right? They have some family member that's in the out in the country. And I remember telling one of my African colleagues that I'd never seen a chicken be killed. I'd never literally grown any food that I've ever eaten. Every food I've ever eaten has been bought at the store or at a restaurant, right? Or it's been fed to me. And he just laughed because it's so foreign, right? But that's the level we've reached in the United States, where we're so disconnected from the production of food. And you can make an argument whether that's better or worse. The point isn't. The point though is just that we are so far away. But 70, 80 years ago, not that long ago in the United States, most Americans knew what that was like because they also had farms or they had family members that produced food, right? And so it doesn't take that long. And I would make the statement that South Sudan 70 years from now is going to look vastly different than it does today. And so that's the vision that we're talking about. And so how is sustainability reached? I would say the way I've kind of broken it down in my brain and at every village, this is what we focus on, is there are a lot of different inputs to sustainability, but I look at two major ones to keep it really simple. And that is, the first one we always think about is money, financial sustainability. But the second one is equally important and some ways it's more difficult, but I'll call it leadership sustainability. It's the people side. And so, you could have a great profit model where, money's pouring in and being locally sustained for some service or product that's being provided, and people are willing to pay for it. But if you don't have good leaders, it's all going to fall. It's not going to be sustained. So leadership is key. Now, of course, you could have great leaders who have great character, great capability, and so forth. And if there's not a financial model in place, of course, that also is not sustainable. So it does take both. But we so often just jump straight to financial sustainability. So what I'd say for, I'll speak to every village's work specifically for South Sudan, but then recognize that, this is really a vision for the whole nation as well. This is not just every village programs that we want to see sustainable. We want to see other things that are sustainable. And so on the Every Village side of things, let's look at our water program, the SWC program, Sustainable Water Cooperative. It has the word sustainable in it. It's a great vision of community-based maintenance and repair of their water wells, and the community is coming together to pay for their water services and to provide the pump mechanics and the water committees and everything that's necessary to sustain their water wells. It's happening. It's working. Financially, it's not 100% covered yet by local funds, but we see a pathway to getting there. Every year that we've launched this, since we launched this program, it's been getting stronger and stronger buy-in from the community financially. But we're not a for-profit business, so our goal is not to get to profit as quickly as possible. Our goal is to go about this slowly enough so that people can continue to catch the vision and that it's still accessible to the poorest communities. Because we're recognizing that while they do have the capacity, I think, to cover their water provision, it's still hard. They don't have stable income. They don't have a lot of money. And so we're not trying to drive a hard negotiation here and squeeze everything we can out of the Southernese, but we do believe that them ultimately paying for their water services long term is going to be the best approach. And so I love that. But it still so much rests on the people catching the vision and being willing and able to lead that work. And that's, and there's a lot of different sectors to consider. There's certainly the local community that has the water well, but it's also the local government to ensure that they're bought in and not competition or rivals or threatened or jealous or whatever. There's a lot of potential obstacles you could face if you don't do it well. And there's the logistical side of things, the vendors and suppliers of parts. There's so many different players in a water sector that need to be brought along together so that they're all, frankly, incentivized to make sure that this works. And so that's where money is kind of the glue that holds it all together. Everybody has to have an incentive. And so, that's what we're seeing. Radio for every village, there's a pathway to local sustainability as well. It's a little bit harder than water, just because the cost of running a radio station is higher than the cost to maintain a water well. And while it is a direct service to the people providing a daily broadcasting, it's not as tangible of a service as a water well. And so, you're not getting regular payments the way you would with water. But it is amazing to see, because we're dependent on donations from listeners to the stations every year, just like Christian stations sometimes are here in the United States. And so, is that sustainable? Well, it is sustainable if donors keep on funding it, but it's still dependent on donations. So what does that mean, right? And we've seen, but like over the years, the people give so generously, and we have tens of thousands of people to donate every year to the station. It's the number of people that are giving is incredibly high. It's amazing, but they're only giving about 30 cents per person, and then you add in the fact that it's inflation, and it makes it even more difficult, because our costs are in dollars largely to build the stations or to operate the stations, to purchase the fuel or whatever, but the income is in South Sudanese pounds. Well, Tiana, just last week, I found out that the South Sudanese pound hit 4,000 pounds to $1.
No way.
In the beginning of 2016, it was 5 pounds to $1.
Wow.
So we've seen hyperinflation. It's insane. I was just in South Sudan a few months ago, and it was 3,000, and now it's 4,000, just in a matter of a few months. That type of inflation makes it very difficult to sustain anything, right? And yet, the more important thing to me is that people have caught the vision, and they have the desire. They believe in what the radio is doing, how it's changing the communities, and they're going to make sure that station continues. Like, they don't want to see it shut down. If you have that level of buy-in from a local community, to me, that's far more important than the financial. The financial will follow that, but you have the challenges of that. So that's kind of every village program areas and where we see sustainability. But like, just backing out to the nation at large, there are signs of success. There are signs of improvement along the way, real development happening. Tiana, you and I were talking about one of the things I love seeing local South Sudanese businesses flourish, because it gives a vision. And we're starting to be able to utilize South Sudanese businesses to do work for us that we didn't have in the options in the past. So as an example, there's a new solar power company in Awil that's South Sudanese owned, and I know that they were financed originally through American investment, which is great, but they now have a solar yard in Awil, and they've installed electrical lines in the market, and there's actually some electricity in the market in Awil. Now, it's not a lot, but it's just one strip, that it's probably got, 50, 60 market shops, whatever. They all have electricity now. And it's amazing. Well, we've utilized that company, and we paid them to install a couple solar power systems at our radio stations and compounds now. And I love the fact that they're providing fair pricing. They're doing good work. And the first time we did this was our repeater tower in Ngapagok outside of Tanj. And I remember one of our guys sending a video of the guys installing it. And I just sat back and watched the video, and I loved it because it was all South Sudanese, installing the batteries and the charge controllers and everything. That was not possible 10 years ago at all. The South Sudanese wouldn't have had the knowledge to know how to do it, and they wouldn't have had the capital and the equipment to do it. I love that. I believe in investment in the local economy. Another example is builders. Something as simple as construction is still challenging to get high quality builders, right? And I remember years ago when we built our first compound in Nasser for our missionaries, we brought in Ugandan builders, and we brought in a lot from the outside, a lot of the materials and certainly the knowledge to come in and construct that compound. That was expensive, but that's what we had to do. Well, now for the last several years, for all of the buildings that we've built on our compounds, as we've grown, we've been able to employ local South Sudanese builders, and I love seeing that, and again, just another sign of development and some flourishing, moving towards a sustainable society. And so, those are just a few examples, but it's going to take a lot of time still, because the biggest hurdle still is the mindset shift that needs to happen. Because of their history of war, the thing that war has robbed the South Sudanese of most is a mindset of maintenance, a mindset of taking care of themselves. They've become so dependent on foreign aid that, big projects, millions of dollars of things are brought in, and then there's no maintenance plan, and then they just sit broken. And so more and more, our dream is to see more South Sudanese have a vision for, we're not only need this done, but we're going to pool together the resources, the knowledge, whatever it takes to make sure that it keeps, being maintained. And when you start to have that mindset shift, man, they are an unstoppable force. They're, the issue for them, it's simply a matter of catching that vision, and they have the capability to take that on. And so that's what we dream of. That's how we see sustainability in South Sudan. And I go back finally to what you said, Tiana, and that is that it is possible, and it's going to happen. It's just a matter of time, and certainly a lot of prayer, and ultimately by the power of the Lord. But we pray that South Sudan, as it develops, it's developing not just in terms of infrastructure or in terms of capacity, but in terms of character, in terms of love for the Lord, that they would become a nation of worshipers. And so that's our dream.
Oh, it's so good. Okay, a few times as you were speaking, I wish I had like a like a soundboard on the side where I could do like clapping hands or like the crowd cheering. I thought you had some really, really good points. Yeah, that was really good.
Thanks.
You did it very concisely, too.
Thanks. I mean, I could have gone a lot of directions, so I hope I hit all the things that are floating around in my head. There's a lot floating in my head. I think that was really good. Well, also, I think it was just very understandable, too, so I really enjoyed it. So thank you so much. Thanks for giving me the chance.
I know I give you a good one jumping back on.
Yeah.
So thank you so much again. I really appreciate it. I think we're on such a roll for good topics, so I have another good one for next episode. So we invite everyone back to the next episode as we answer the question, what are some mistakes every village has made in the past, and what have you learned from them?
Ooh, that's going to be fun.
All right. We will talk to everybody later. Take care.